Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. It's Jim, it's Matt, and our special guest, Dennis Dodd. Dennis and I have been friends for a while, and this is the first time we were talking about this in the pre-show. We've been on the same show together. We just haven't been on the same show together at the same time. So this is our first opportunity to be together, and so good to have you on, Dennis.
It's a pleasure. Jim, got plenty of time nowadays with retirement and not in the rear view mirror, out the windshield. So just glad to contribute these days.
Well, it's always fun to have you, and you always bring a lot of insight, plus a sense of humor, which I think we all can use from time to time. So, anyway, some conference championships this week. I'm not so sure that with the ACC, I'm not going to watch something on Netflix, but let's start there. There's a lot of crazy that goes on in that situation. And by the way, how did Jim Phillips let that happen?
Yeah.
A Duke final with Virginia.
Well, it's a symptom of realignment, super conferences, 16-team conferences, 17, 18-team conferences, 17 in the case of the ACC. I traced it back because I asked these questions when it happened. They are still in the process of building the plane while it flies. Because I asked during in the midst of college realignment, well, what are you going to do with tiebreakers? Because the mere size of these conferences and the fact that they barely play half the teams in their conference is going to suggest a massive logjam at the top sooner or later. And it happened last year with the Big 12. They had, I always love telling this story, to the point going in the final weekend, they had a four-way tie for the lead. You still couldn't figure out who the top two were going to be. I actually called the office to get the tiebreaker because I didn't know. I hadn't paid attention to it. They didn't know. They actually said, we'll get back to you. Now, there was a guy in the office that knew, but he got back to me Monday. So that's just one example of what this means. Now, the question is, how did the ACC allow this to happen? Look, when we went to I call it single table conference standings without divisions, the drawback of divisions was that you might end up with an 8-4 team playing an 11-1 team. Nobody thought that, a 7-5 team could be whatever they were. What is it, 6-2?
Yeah.
In the ACC. They should have, and they should have found a way to account for it, and they should have found a way for their number 2 team or number 1 team, as it is right now, probably Miami, to get in, but they didn't. The same thing goes with and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but the travel with these Big Ten and ACC teams. I remember asking the question when the Big Ten expanded to USC and UCLA. What about the travel? Because I don't have to get into what all that entails. We've seen it played out on the national stage. Oh, we'll figure it out. Okay, all right. Never mind grades. I hate to bring up academics, tutors, mental health issues for people with relationships, and being absolutely worn out, and student athlete welfare. Let's just put it all in one place. But it was a whiff by the ACC, to the point that we all know now, if Duke wins, that most likely eliminates the ACC from the playoff, because if the watchers and the listeners don't know, the top 4 are granted byes, and the top 5 conference champions are granted admission. Well, the ACC in that scenario would not be one of the top 5 conferences. It would be the Sun Belt and or the American getting in there. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I am curious. Couple of things. First off, I do think there's a world where 7-5 Duke, based off of Hunter Yurichek's, rambling every Tuesday night, that there's a scenario where they view that ranked win and they jump above James Madison. I think it was big that James Madison got ranked at 25, but I would be lying if I said it's out of the realm of possibility for the committee to look at it and go, they played an ACC schedule, not a Sun Belt schedule. So we value that ranked win, and we felt it was enough to boost them above James Madison at 25. So there is that. And also the time that I knew tiebreakers were broken is when there was a scenario that if Alabama loses to Auburn, they were going to be out of the SEC championship having 2 conference losses.
Yeah.
Georgia had 2 conference losses, and they lost the head-to-head. Like people were talking about in the playoffs, head-to-head needs to matter. Head-to-head still should matter in terms of these conference races as well, but it can't based off the new structure that they've implemented.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny that the Mountain West, I didn't even know this till late. The Mountain West, their tiebreaker is basically BCS computers or
Right.
a fraction of those. I think 4 of them. So some 4 metrics. I don't really care. I don't even know. But my point is, with UNLV playing Boise State now, it looks kind of smart. We're having this circular argument about Texas 3 losses, but they have 3 wins against top 10 teams. You just mentioned the committee elevating Duke over the Sun Belt champion, which it in nowhere in the protocol is that there's not even a hint of that being addressed. The computers actually look smart here. I'm not going to tell you what the other 2 teams in the Mountain West think about being left out, but everybody agreed to it. What they didn't agree to, and here's the hypocrisy, Matt, of what you're talking about. If indeed they reward an 8-5 Duke for being ranked Virginia at the end of the season to win the ACC, then we're not even having that conversation until Miami's ranked ahead of Notre Dame, because the committee painted themselves into this corner in the first week. I think it was the first week when they ranked Notre Dame 9th and Miami 13th. Well, it's one thing to do that. It's another, as Hunter Yurachek then said, well, we didn't even consider them in the same pod. And if you don't know how they do this, they vote on groups of 3 or 4, I forget it is, and then plug them into the top 25.
It's 3.
It's 3.
It's 4.
So, I mean, everything else being equal, and if you look at the resumes, they basically are between Miami and Notre Dame. It comes down to head-to-head. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is for them not even to be considered together, like in the same neighborhood, is absolutely outrageous at this point. I know Miami. I think Miami was coming off the loss to Louisville. But when somebody had a great point today on Twitter, when did losses to SMU and Louisville become, huge upsets or bad losses? They're not bad losses. You got to look at this thing in terms of the entire season. I think Louisville was 8-4. And SMU was 8-4, and I think Louisville was 8-4 as well. So those aren't bad losses. That doesn't doom, in my mind, Miami to the outskirts of the playoffs. So if they do one, they sure as heck better do the other.
Let's talk a little bit about who might win that game, Virginia and Duke. Virginia's played pretty well this year, and Duke's had moments. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if Duke wins this and just screws the whole ACC up, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, didn't Duke beat Virginia in the regular season?
Yep.
I mean, so we've got that. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this game, but I think it's fairly evenly matched from a rooting standpoint. If you've got a heartbeat inside of you, you got to be rooting for Tony Elliott and Virginia just because of what he's gone through, what they've gone through these last 3 years. Manny Diaz is a guy that deserves a championship after a long, storied career that he's had. But wouldn't it be? I mean, if Duke wins this thing and wins it, I don't know, by a field goal or something like that, and this is all on the shoulders of the selection committee, I think that'd be something.
So Virginia beat Duke by 17 at home earlier this year. That was the result there. Turned the ball over. The cardiac calves, I think, is what Tony Elliott has referred to them as. You got to give them credit throughout this year. They found ways to win. Sometimes that's more important than being a necessarily sound football team. It's can you get to the fourth quarter in a tight ball game and find a way to win? They have, and they've done it, relatively consistently. It's one of those teams where you're looking at it kind of like BYU this year, where you're seeing some of these closer results, and it applies more to Virginia than it does to BYU, but where you see these close results week over week, and everybody will put out their upset meter, and they're always right there up top. Upset meters don't matter if you know how to win football games. If Virginia knows how to win, you got to give them a lot of credit. Aside from the committee and stuff, this headline right here is the one that intrigues me the most. Manny Diaz wins an ACC title at Duke before Miami wins an ACC title.
Yeah.
That's a guy that they kicked out the door in favor of Cristobal.
Yep.
He went out to Penn State. He had a couple good years as the defensive coordinator there. And, they may be 7-5, but they're playing in the game and Miami's not. So that in and of itself, I think would be hilarious on its own.
Absolutely. What do I know? Virginia beat Duke, but no, I think what he's done there has been admirable. We've seen Mike Elko, some others, Steve Spurrier, that you can milk something out of that Duke program, but it doesn't last very long for a variety of reasons. And the Miami thing, Matt, you raise a good point that Duke wins one before Miami. I don't know if y'all remember, but when this thing started in, what was it? The ACC expanded in 03, 04.
Right.
ABC went out of its way to kick off the season on Labor Day night with Miami and Florida State for a period of about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And that was the standalone game. Here's our two best teams, and we're going to showcase them right out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the state of those programs, I don't have to tell you what happened to those. It just kind of fizzled out. They weren't really part of it. Miami certainly wasn't a part of the race, and it would be more than ironic. But what do you do with Miami? Because I don't know if this cures things in a 16-team field. Obviously, there'd be room for them, but there'd also be room for Virginia and Duke as the champion. You'd have a situation where we'd be arguing over 3 from the ACC. So I don't know where you go with this.
No, I was thinking the other day, look at where Miami, Florida State, and Penn State, Syracuse, I'm sorry, which we're going back to not Penn State, Pitt, Syracuse, all these schools who, when they were independents, had great success. When they got in the conference, they didn't win anything. Mm-hmm. So, I'm curious as to, when you're talking about, I had flashbacks when you're talking about the ACC in that year, because that's the year that the Big East crushed. Mm-hmm. I mean, they came tumbling down during that time.
Yeah. In terms of this Miami problem as a whole, I hate the argument overall. I look at last year, I look at this year, and I go, why did we move off of 4? I feel like this year it's pretty cut and dry. You'd have probably your 2 Big Ten teams playing in the title, your SEC winner, and then Texas Tech most likely, because I think they're going to take care of business against BYU on Saturday. It feels like another model where last year, again, you were sat there looking and go, hey, we've got like a clear-cut top 4 here. What are we doing? Why does Ohio State get to lose to Michigan? Why does Miami get to slip up twice and still have this argument? I feel like I'm in a very small minority online where I think that Notre Dame is rightly above Miami.
Matt, real quick, in that top 4, is the SEC in there?
Last year or this year?
This year.
As of right now, yes. I think if Alabama were to beat Georgia, then you're probably in a different discussion. Again, the 2 Big Ten, I feel like, is the obvious piece of this. Texas Tech's probably going to figure it out. But I would say that –
and then SEC.
Yeah, and then probably your one SEC team. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the 4-team model better. It valued the regular season more than we do now, because this is a model where Miami loses one of those games, in 4 teams, then they're already on the outside looking in. You have your leeway with the 1 loss is what I'll give Miami, but to lose to SMU and Louisville, it feels like one that should leave them on the outside looking in. It's the weakest conference in football, and the two strongest teams you played, you lost to on that schedule. I know they beat Notre Dame, but I look at Notre Dame as a team that scheduled two really hard non-conference. But obviously, they're not in a conference. They scheduled two really hard teams in Miami and Texas A&M at the start of the season, where you're starting your freshman quarterback, and their defense was not playing well. And week over week, I've seen CJ Carr become better. I've seen that offense become more complete, and that defense has rounded into form like they didn't have early in the season. I mean, dear God, they gave up like 35 to Purdue earlier in the season. Their defense has rounded into form. And when you go down that list of the top 12 teams, Ohio State and Indiana didn't lose to anybody. Georgia lost to Alabama at home. Texas Tech lost to Arizona State on the road. That's one. You get a slip up. You get one slip up. And Oregon lost to Indiana. Ole Miss lost to Georgia. Texas A&M lost to Texas. Alabama lost to Oklahoma and Florida State. That's the stain. That Florida State stain.
That's another discussion with Alabama.
Yeah.
That you can't, just like you can't wipe away Notre Dame's loss to Miami, that Florida State loss, again, opening night
ugly.
is ugly. If they lose the third time, I think I know what's going to happen, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, with the committee's move on Tuesday, it would all but assure that Alabama will be in that playoff. Oklahoma, they lost to Ole Miss and they lost to Texas. So Notre Dame, you lose to Texas A&M, you lose to Miami. BYU, you lost to Texas Tech. All of those teams, their losses save Texas Tech's loss, which again they got one. And Alabama's really ugly loss in really what has been an inconsistent season in terms of performance from them, I think should raise a little more question. But I also go back to as much as head-to-head and those week one results need to matter, this is a sport of football where you can objectively look at things and say, that team week one is different now in week 13. I know they got better. I watched them get better week over week. These metrics tell me they got better because I can tell you that with Georgia. Georgia couldn't rush the passer in the first, probably 7-8 weeks of the season.
Couldn't rush, period.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they weren't I was sitting in the stands and I watched Alabama set up a freaking wall every third down in Athens, Georgia. They could not get home. Now they're getting home, and their pass coverage on the back end, specifically with Ellis Robinson right now and DeMello Jones, both those guys came in and played great. They've evolved throughout the year, and there's different teams that have done that. I think Notre Dame's a team that's done that. And I do think that the committee did back themselves into a hole when they did rank Notre Dame as high as they did. But I really don't have a problem with where they sit right now.
I think the question you have to ask yourself, and I said this from, the early days of the BCS, is at what point does the playoff in place not become credible to, the general public? Is it without Texas? Is it without Notre Dame? Is it without Miami? That's the question they have to ask themselves. Matt, I get your points. I get those, and those all have to be taken into place. But if the playoff itself, leaves out a championship contender, and that's why they're around the committee to decide that, then they've got a problem. And I think you can't just, they've just painted themselves into a corner. Well, it's more than that. It's there's their ability. It's like gambling. It's what these with all these scandals in the NBA in pro sports. If you don't believe in the results of the game, then people are going to stop watching and stop buying tickets. If this is a hard thing to say, but if they don't believe in the playoff, people are, hey, I'm out, I ain't watching.
Yeah,
I will say this real quick.
Yeah.
I thought last year in 2024, when it expanded to 12, that was one of the most entertaining seasons I'd ever covered. I got it. On November 1st, I counted 40 or 45 teams that were still still eligible, still had a chance to get in, because you can't discount any group of 5 school that has a chance of winning its conference title at that point. This year it was 55. And this is that I came up with on November 1st. This is exactly what the commissioners wanted. Those 4 commissioners, Swarbrick, Sankey, Craig Thompson, and Bob Bowlesby, they wanted that on November 1st, and they got that. So I'm okay. I don't think the system's broken. I think the committee's broken, but I like the 12. I'd have no problem with 16. I'm not, banging my foot on the table for it, my shoe, Khrushchev style, but I think 12's been great. That's my point. Long-winded.
Yeah. I do have to, going back to the committee and when it would be broken, is it goes back to their mantra. Are they going for the 12 best or the 12 most deserving?
There you go. Yeah.
Because I feel like as much as they painted themselves into the corner trying to walk that line of best and most deserving, if they just want to go best teams, then there's a real easy argument, and that's you knock Oklahoma right out of that playoff. I mean, just
and frankly, put Texas in, but we can have that conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, Texas and Miami, I think, have better arguments in terms of the product they put on the field than Alabama and Oklahoma both do. Yeah. But in terms of the SEC title game in Alabama, I'll sit here and I'll crap on Alabama because I mean they have played just disgustingly inconsistent football this season. There's no way to really go around that one. But in that inconsistency, I also believe that they tend to play their best football whenever that red G is on the field against them. That's so right.
Five out of 6.
It defies all logic. I think back to 21, man, and they needed that gravedigger to win in Auburn, Alabama, and then they go and they roll Georgia in the SEC title. The same thing goes for 23. They were struggling again. Or no. 21 was when they needed Bryce Young's last second drive. 23 was their gravedigger, and then they came in and they beat Georgia, the number 1 team in the country, 12-0 by 3 points. It defies all logic. What happens to that Crimson A when they see the Power G across from them, or maybe it's the other way around. What happens to that Power G when they see the Crimson A? But for as bad as inconsistent as Alabama has played as a whole, and you can blame some of that on some injuries. They don't have or haven't had Josh Cuevas. I know he's listed as questionable on the injury report this week, but. Man,
they have a running game. They have a running game.
They just haven't ran the football. They've been terribly inconsistent, and yet despite all that, I still am in a state where I will pick Alabama this weekend until I see Georgia beat them again.
Well, this decade alone, Alabama has won 5 of the 6 meetings with Georgia. The only one Georgia won was pretty significant. It was for a national championship in where was that? Was that in LA? I can't remember, but 33-18. Yeah, 33-18. So there's that. But again, when those committee members hang up their hats symbolically and not take anything into account and everything's subjective, should any of that matter? Are we dealing with this season? I mean, I love talking about it because I agree with you, Matt. I mean, that something happens with Georgia, who may or may not have had the better program in these meetings. I think they do now. I think it's clear, but Alabama gets to them. So we'll see.
I'll tell you what, guys, and this is as far back as I can go back into the 80s. These programs, I mean, these administrators, these people who pick, right? They want you to think that they're picking maybe the 12 best teams, right? And we can also lump the NCAA basketball grouping in that. They're going to go for the eyeballs. If there is a coin flip between A and B, trust me, they're going to go for the team that's going to bring them the ratings because that's what drives the sport. And regardless of whether, I believe that's the best team or not, if they are a good ratings team and it's a coin flip, they're going to go there, which is why Notre Dame always, they figure a way again.
Well, that's been mitigated. Go ahead.
I was going to say ESPN is sitting back licking their chops because one, what the move did last week was ensure that Alabama's in the playoff. And two, what that move did last week is ensure that everybody is going to turn their TVs on Sunday afternoon for that final rankings release, because that Golden Dome and that U are going head to head for that last spot, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to say, David? Dennis, go ahead.
I was going to say the football versus basketball argument is mitigated by much larger sample size in basketball.
Right, sure.
And to hear Dick Vitale year after year, lose his mind over Wofford being left out or whoever it is.
Right.
That lasts maybe 12 hours, maybe a news cycle.
Mm-hmm.
This is accounted for, at least in this structure.
Right.
The G5 team has to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it's right. I don't say the TVs like it because they don't. But, Boise State was in last year.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't draw eyeballs. But what they didn't, none of these people figured out is, what are we talking about? A Troy and a North Texas being in, but not the ACC champion. No one saw that far. And that's I blame that all on the again, building this thing in midair while it's flying, just like the tiebreakers. So that's on the participants. That's on the commissioners. That's on the analysts that help them. So I don't have any sympathy. But there is, my point is, there is some, built-in access for these schools, and really in the basketball tournament as well. All 32 champions get in. And when you hear a person like Greg Sankey lobbying for maybe it should be 28, well, guess where those 4 extra spots go to? He hopes the SEC.
Right. Sure.
He thinks the Big Ten. So let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
I was just going to pose, Dennis, do you think that if Duke wins on Saturday, that's going to change the committee thinking in terms of that Notre Dame-Miami argument, with the ACC being left out if Miami does not make it as an at-large bid?
What particular thinking would there be with Miami?
Would they, if Virginia wins,
right?
Do you think if Duke beats Virginia, that the committee will be more likely
to impact? To
get the ACC into that field?
If Duke wins, will that impact the decision on Miami and Notre Dame? Is what you're saying?
Yes.
A further decision. I think it has to, because then you're having that on its face until we know better. Allows 2 group of 5 teams in. So it's not it's a double whammy. You're not only missing the ACC, you're allowing 2 group of 5 teams in, and to do that, you're going to have to make a decision against possibly with those 2, Miami, Notre Dame, and an Alabama team suffering its 3rd loss to Georgia. Let's say by double digits. I mean, Matt, you're not a big fan of Alabama. Can we put Alabama in that discussion too?
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard. I think it'd be hard to leave them out, but I don't know.
That's why I was so I was so against moving Alabama up. I know it's very obvious optics wise why they did move them up, but I was against it because it felt like you had an obvious like now not only are you talking about putting a 3-loss team in, they're a 3-loss team with an at-large bid is what Alabama is.
Yeah.
Whatever ends up happening, it feels like the committee is setting a dangerous precedent on Sunday when they come out with their final rankings. Depending on what shakes out, they have a very dangerous, because last year they set the precedent where you can't really be damaged by playing in that extra conference title game. Okay, well, what if you have 2 teams sitting at home and they get flip-flopped in seemingly the middle of the night, and you don't really have any kind of a data point to point at?
It's happened before. First of all, precedent. They don't care. It's new every year. They wipe their hands of it from week to week. The first year in 2014 of the playoff, 14 playoff, people forget that on the final day of the season, conference championship Saturday, TCU played it wasn't a conference title game because I don't think the Big Ten had a conference.
They didn't have it. Big 12.
Yeah. But they beat Iowa State by 52 points. And they were number 3. Okay.
Mhm.
an absolute lock. Well, Ohio State was 6th and beat Wisconsin 59-0 in the Big Ten championship game. And I think in that game, Wisconsin was the 3-point favorite.
Right.
Okay, impressive result. On the next day, they moved Ohio State in at number 3 or 4,
Mhm.
and TCU dropped out. Now, we all know Ohio State validated that choice by winning the whole thing. But that's still, along with the Florida State thing a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
as far as precedent goes, they don't care about precedent. They do whatever they want week to week and live with. There's no one to live with the consequences. They all drop off. We don't see their votes. That's another discussion. And the system was made so we don't see their votes. Bill Hancock told me when he was executive director of the CFP, they have these computers and they type in their, you mentioned, Jim, the 3 teams in that pod. Right. Well, that goes away with every vote. So when Florida State sued them last year, whenever it was, when they got left out, there's no paper trail. So this, to me, and I'm getting off on a rant here, but it's the most secretive process there is in sports, not just college sports, in sports. We know how the sausage is made. We can see the coaches' votes at the end of the year. We can see any AP voters vote from week to week whenever we want. So to say there's a precedent, they're not held accountable is what I'm saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, no, they're not. And you can tell. I mean, as you were it's funny when you're talking about the lawyer situation, I'm thinking you can't, you need discovery, right? To build a trial.
Yeah.
If you have no discovery, you can't, what are you going to do? Bring them in and, and swear them to truth.
Yeah.
That would be a joke.
And you better believe it was made that way.
Of course. I mean,
you better believe it was designed that way.
And all of them were in on it. So it's not like, like one's pushing the other one around.
Yeah, they don't want to rock through their living room window. They don't want to be flamed on social media. Well, to that I say, then don't do it. There's 12 people or 13 people in the country that don't have, 1, a conflict of interest. Right. 2, don't have to leave their jobs as athletic directors for parts of 4 days every week. And in the case of Hunter Yurachek, hiring a coach while he does this. I mean, that to me is, if I were an Arkansas fan, I'd be outraged. And if I was, I'd doubly be outraged by Ryan Silverfield. But that's another story.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, I don't think it would have mattered if Hunter Yurachek was in the office those 4 days in terms of the hiring process that he was running.
Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a situation in the beginning of the season when there was a splash that Texas Tech made. You got to look at it and go, you know what? It worked out for them.
Yeah.
The
amount of money that was poured in.
The $28 million, which was chronicled in depth by several outlets, including me. It worked for the same thing Ohio State did last year. I think the number attached to their roster was 20 million.
Right.
And it absolutely worked. What kind of overshadowed it was that Michigan lost at the end of the season, which was, frankly, it was the end of the world for the whole program. To the point that I asked Will Howard in the press conference, the quarterback, this is at the end of the press conference, they're devastated. I don't have to tell you what that game meant.
Right.
And I said, on your list of takeaways from this game, where does the fact that you're in the playoff and you can play for a national championship and you may be one of the favorites? And he kind of looked at me and said, it's not even on there. So that kind of got wiped away. So Ohio State did the same thing with Caleb Downs and some others.
Sure.
Texas Tech, to me, was proof of concept. Better than Dion, at Colorado. The only one that was better was Kurt Signetti at Indiana. And I don't know if they spent that much money. Maybe they did. I don't know. Great job by him. But Texas Tech was, like Indiana, a non-factor for years, went out and targeted, I think, players at 7 or 8 positions. And Cody Campbell, who's their big billionaire donor, told me we got our number 1 guy at every position we targeted. And they already had the quarterback and Baron Morton. They already had the running backs and the receivers. What they really needed is defensive help. And now they come into this thing top I think top 10 offense, top 10 defense, which is
Mhm.
something you never say about Texas Tech.
No.
So it's more proof of concept with them. The next question for them is, how do you keep it going? And I posed
Right.
that to Kirby Hocutt, their AD, a few weeks ago, and he reminded me that a lot of these players are on multi-year contracts. So they thought far enough ahead, like a pro team, to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I've got just in terms. I have a friend of a friend that is actually at Texas Tech right now, and if what I was told is true, they actually have incentives
Mm-hmm.
to return if they don't go at a certain round in the draft.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
No, they drew up tremendous contracts. I mean, these are pro type contracts. They have incentives there. They have incentives for the coaches and the players. So what they did is they built a model at Texas Tech, which, if you can afford it, is something you might want to take in. But at the end of the day, you can still spend that money and not make it.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to give credit to Texas Tech of, okay, we went and got our guys, but at the same time, they went and got their guys, but they also won.
It's what the Big Ten has done at least these last 2 years. The
Mhm.
Big Ten as a conference, as a brand, has always had the most money. There's nothing new about what they're doing. There's more zeros, but
Mhm.
they've always had the most living alumni, which translates to donations, the biggest markets up
Yeah.
in the north, the most money, the most rights fees when that became a thing.
Mhm.
People started tracking that. What they lacked and what they have finally realized, somehow they've translated all that advantage to the football field. And they've won the last 2 national championships,
Mhm.
shutting out the SEC for the first time in 20 years. The
Mhm.
last time the SEC in consecutive years didn't play for the national championship was 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really nice, a really interesting subject asterisk to follow in this playoff, because it's, two is interesting. 3 is a trend, man. If the SEC doesn't win it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
one last note on Texas Tech. They also showed a model in terms of their coaching staff as well. Their head coach is not like schematic guy.
No.
You ask Joey McGuire himself, he'll say he is there to be the CEO. So
Yeah.
they are running their coaching staff different than a lot of places in the country, and it's working. I mean, it's a path that I now think I pitched it yesterday. I was like, at this point, with the way the Penn State head coaching search has gone, they might need to look into saying, hey, Terry, like we need you to kind of fill this role and just supplement everything
Yeah.
else with their finances.
Yeah. Unless Dan Mullen goes, but that's another discussion. But Texas Tech has, going right in with this, what we're talking about, they have arguably the best general manager in the country, George Blanchard,
Right.
who USC and Notre Dame took a run at him. And again, Texas Tech came up with the money. I think he's making close to $1 million, if not more, to keep him. And he's that guy who came from anonymity, a guy who worked, I think, in East Texas on his own, just scouting high school talent and putting together lists because he wanted to do something like that. While for money, he made fire hydrants. Now, if there's not a more American story than that, I don't know. I mean, if they get to the championship and the most important administrator is not the coach, it's the general manager who once built fire hydrants, that's a heck of a story. And I'm rooting for that, by the way. I love that.
There you go.
It was.
I was just going to say, Matt, we're going to step aside for a second and pay some bills, and we'll be right back. Okay, stay with us, folks. Matt,
So
talk about our buddy there, Zach Bobo, and we've got his phone number on there, and there you go. So if you need real estate in the Georgia area or anywhere in the Southeast, give Zach a call. All right. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you were about to say, Matthew.
I was just going to toss in there the general manager in terms of how important it is and will continue to be in college football. It was a sticking point in why Lane Kiffin and Florida never really got on the same page in terms of their hiring process. Florida wanted to keep their guy. Lane wanted to bring his guy. Florida and Scott Strickland did not seem too keen on that idea.
Not only did they not see keen on it, they basically told him no. And I spoke to a couple of people yesterday, close to the Gators, and a couple of the Bull Gator money guys, and Scott Strickland was asked by Lane if I'm allowed to, meaning Ole Miss, lets me coach through the playoffs. Is that okay? And Scott said, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Why would it be? There's three people that thinks it makes sense: Kirk Herbstreit, Nick Saban, and who else was on there? Maybe Reese Davis. I don't know.
Might have been Reese.
When I heard that, I go, in the SEC, you want to split the baby in half between Ole Miss and LSU, who are blood rivals? You got to be kidding me! And then for Lane to flame the AD, Keith Carter, on the way out the door, I was denied a chance to coach the team in the playoff. The team didn't want him to coach in the playoff, according to multiple reports.
All of the players,
right? And why would you even push that? I mean, he said because it's all about Lane, and he's a narcissist, and this is going to end the same way it always ends at LSU, except for Nick Saban didn't get fired. He went to he'll get fired. The NFL will come calling. He'll go somewhere else, and it'll be a nice 3, 4, 5 year run, and it'll be Brian Kelly with, I don't know, maybe 5 more wins total.
Yeah.
It's funny, guys. You're talking about Keith Carter. He's done more media in the last 2 days than he has in his entire career. I swear, I was at lunch a couple of minutes ago, I thought when I opened my microwave and see Keith in there going, explain to me why half of what Lane said wasn't even close to what Lane said.
I love it.
He said he was in the room when Lane told the coaches, made that declaration: if you're not on the plane, you're not with me. And then when he talked about, when he did the interview with Marty on the tarmac out there, talking about, the players wanted me to do, we've got 7 or 8 players that came out on X who literally said, no, we didn't want him. Okay. Yep. No, we didn't even want him in the room. So, Lane can spin it any way he wants to, but the Ole Miss people are out there saying, you know what? We have no love for you anymore, and we are going to scorch earth on this one.
All that said, I looked in Brian Kelly's eyes the summer before he started at LSU. I went down and talked to him. I said, you do understand that 10-2 isn't good enough here, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, I get it. Yeah, they want to win championships, right? I don't think Lane understands that, because if he goes 10-2, he'll flame LSU fans. Like, well, we went 10-2. Isn't that good enough? The issue is that for a lot of these coaches, the playoff will meet coaches like him in the middle, and he'll get in the playoff. But it's a higher standard at LSU, and that has to be taken into it. Is it a better program? Yes. Is it more money? In this case, probably it was a push, and I do believe this wasn't about money. This was a chance to go to LSU, a place where Nick Saban, won his first championship and is a national power at best, and some of the best talent in the country every year. So I get that. What I don't get is stringing everybody along for a week or 10 days. I'm going to make my decision like LeBron when he left or when he went to Miami. Yeah. The fact that he couldn't commit the week of the Egg Bowl told you all you had to know. If he's asked at the same time, he's asking his players to give 100% and beat the Bulldogs. He can't even commit to his own job. And that's the problem I had.
Yeah. You made mention of the people who thought it was acceptable for him to both coach Ole Miss and be at LSU. Yeah. Funny enough, all those guys you mentioned were repped by Jimmy Sexton. I see a PR rescue mission when I know it when I see it. In terms of Lane Kiffin as a head coach at LSU, I think his success there is fully dependent on whether or not Blake Baker takes that Tulane job. He is defensive coordinator dependent. Look at his record prior to Pete Golden getting to Ole Miss. It wasn't fantastic. That's when they made the turn. That's when they started to have a higher level and a more consistent level of success at Ole Miss. So he's not a guy that really attacks high school recruiting at a very high level. He's been very transfer portal dependent during his time at Ole Miss. That's going to have to change. Jane Franklin made comment and alluded to it. He said one guy landed his plane and had the number one recruit waiting on him, which is true. But now that number one recruit's delayed his signing. He didn't sign this in this period, and he's not going to sign in this period. Neither is another high 4-star D lineman down there in Baton Rouge. So, Lane's path isn't – everybody just thinks that Lane Kiffin is there, and now he is going to win 10, 11 games every year, no matter what. This thing is going to just take off the second from game one next year. It's not as cut and dry as that, and I think people just tend to overlook it and really look at it through the mirror of what they saw this year at Ole Miss. This year's Ole Miss team is not going to LSU. The offense at LSU was still abysmal this year. And prior to Blake Baker coming back, their defense was abysmal as well. So they never married it with Brian Kelly. And if Lane Kiffin isn't able to marry the two either, with Blake Baker potentially heading out, then he's going to be facing a similar fate because he has some of the same tendencies that Brian Kelly did. He's just a little more fun with it online.
Yeah. Yeah. The act wears thin when you're going 9-3 and you get the 11 seed in a 16-team playoff, because there are programs like Ole Miss that will hang a playoff participant banner in their indoor. And there's programs like LSU that will only hang national championship banners. And look, again, you can't blame them for going. It's the way it happened. And it's just, we had been conditioned by the many lives of Lane Kiffin, the documentary. Well, he's a changed man. He's more secure.
What a flat-out lie they published.
Yeah, he's a 51-year-old frat bro. Still, it seems like in many cases. So, it'll be entertaining watching.
Let me throw something in. When I agree with both of you on the optics is how that worked. I was talking with the folks at USF the other day. They talked to me because I went there. They were kind enough to give me a degree. And I found out that Alex Golish went to Rob Higgins, who's the CEO of athletics, a few days before they were to play the last game against Rice, and said, look, I've got these deals on the table, and I really think I'm going to go. But I want you to know, and you help, are you cool with me coaching the last game? Not the bowl game, but the last game. And Higgins said yes. From that moment on, Higgins started his coaching search to replace Alex Golish. Why? Because Alex Golish told him ahead of time, I'm going to go. He didn't tell him where, because he said he didn't know at the time. And so when they beat Rice, he told the players, I'm going. But let's win one more for us, right? So he leaves, he goes to Auburn, and then they get Brian Hartline and bring him in. And to me, that was Golish being honest and transparent with his boss and saying, look, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I think this is going to be in my best interest for me and my family. All right, cool. That was it. But Lane is Lane, and Lane cannot live without drama.
No. Yeah. I have nothing to add to that.
God is an LSU fan, because he says I had to go see, I had to go pray on it and get back to God. And God, and evidently Kirk Herbstreit and Nick are also in that church with them on that. He was allowed to basically ruin, a lot of coaches waiting in the wings to get a job.
There are ways to do this, and there are ways not to do this. I think Eric Morris at North Texas did it much the same way.
Yeah, he did.
When he went to Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Same with Summerall.
And same with Summerall.
Right.
You can't look again. You can't deny any of these coaches, including Lane's, desire to move up for a better job. It's just treat people with respect and don't flame them, and don't be I don't know, just bad look.
Don't post hats that say come to the SIP 2026 in 2 weeks before you're bound for Baton Rouge.
Right. Where you knew exactly where you were going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we talked about yesterday. I was talking about being in the building when Frieder got perk walked out of the building and during the a week before the
that was a good comp.
tournament. Yeah. And good old Schembeckler said, do you want that job? And he said, well, I'm not sure. He goes, well, then if you're not sure, you want that job. So fired him at the moment, put Steve Fisher in and said, I want my Michigan man.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I wish Bo was alive to get his take on this.
Oh my God.
Oh, he would have been great.
He would have torched him. I mean, he would have.
A final point on that. Well, maybe not a final one, but a point. I don't begrudge any of these guys the money. I don't begrudge them a buyout. There are 136 people on this planet who can do this in FBS. 64, whatever it is, 68 in the group in the Power Four. That's why they get paid so much. That's why they have buyouts when they get fired, because there's a finite number. It's like actors. It's like CEOs in other businesses. They get money like this. They get parachutes. Hell, Jim Delaney got, what was it? When he retired from the Big Ten, I think he got $20 million just for being Jim Delaney. It's something he negotiated. Didn't do anything. Left the conference in great shape. So I don't have any problem with that. The money, it goes over my head when I hear about the money. Okay, now it's $13 million. So what? It's just the price of poker these days. They're going to find it some way, but I don't begrudge them what they get.
No,
I don't either. It's just how you get it. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you arrive to it.
Yeah, that's the only sticking point on this Lane Kiffin thing. Said it a million times throughout the process. It's not the fact that he took LSU. It's not the school LSU. I had an interaction with somebody that said, if he was going to Alabama, would the media be the same? Yes, it would, because it's not the school that he's going to. It's the way he went about it. Right. That's never going to change with Lane. I mean, dear God, I don't know what kind of meetings him and Nick Saban have had, but people tend to forget Nick Saban kicked him out at Alabama. He did not let him coach the title game. There's a quote from Nick Saban supposedly talking to Jimmy Sexton saying, "How the hell did you let me hire this narcissist?"
Yeah.
So, I don't know what changed between the two of them. I'm glad to see that their relationship's on better terms. It's probably better for Lane and LSU, but it is wild because these things are said and they are meant when they are said, and now we just seem to have forgotten them.
Yeah, I think he did a favor for Jimmy Sexton, like we alluded to earlier. I think that was it. Whatever Nick believes about Lane Kiffin, it was not reflected, I think, in his remarks that he made on ESPN about him being able to coach the playoff.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
It's crazy, but all right. So now we have new coaches. Who of the coaches who are now newly hired, who did the best job? Who won that sweepstakes?
To be determined. We're waiting for Penn State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then around baseball season, we'll come back.
Yeah. When Matt takes the job, we'll.
Right. Yeah.
Matt,
I'm still waiting on finalizing the terms.
We'll work on the buyout, but you need to let us know ahead of time, Matt.
There you go.
Didn't get that job.
My favorite hire is it's one of the two guys coming from the American. It's either Summerall or it's Eric Morris at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
I like Summerall at Florida just because I feel like it's probably going to be based on this is purely an outsider's perspective, but based on his conference and press conference and everything that I've learned about him, Summerall seems like he's going to be a good culture fit at Florida. I think them maintaining the recruiting base that Billy Napier built there is going to be really good. I think it's got a good chance for high roster retention there, which could set them up for success in the immediate future. And in terms of Eric Morris, he's a guy who has has won and created offense with anybody and everybody, no matter where he is. And so I think that's good, especially if Oklahoma State is going to commit to spending more on their football roster as well.
Yeah, I like those two. I know Scott Strickland at Florida is getting a lot of criticism for going through this entire process and letting Lane get away, if that's the term, and hiring John Summerall, who's, some are saying, it's Billy Napier 2.0. I don't know. I don't know John that well. He's well accomplished. I like who's the new Michigan State coach? I forget.
Oh, Pat Fitzgerald.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
That's a guy Penn State should have targeted from the beginning.
Absolutely.
I don't know why they didn't, unless they were too skittish about the hazing thing, which he was exonerated from, and would have had a plug and play coach who's energized at age 51 to keep going. Had been competitive in the Big Ten, knows the landscape. I think Michigan State got lucky. He's my favorite right now.
Yeah.
There's a point about Summerall when you're talking about Billy Napier 2.0. Summerall is much more intense than Billy. And, a lot of times you wondered with Billy, is he being too soft on these guys? Is he not making them accountable? Is he allowing them to get away with stuff that others wouldn't? That's not going to happen with Summerall. Summerall is not that kind of guy. I mean, you can ask the Tulane players. They love him, but they respect the fact that he just doesn't let them get away with anything. And I think the accountability factor, the culture that you set, Billy never really had a culture, at Florida. It was always, you couldn't quite put your finger on it, but Summerall has that. Golish has that, and we just talking about the guy from North Texas Tech. They all have it. They're G5 coaches, but they're coaches who know what they need to do to win. And okay, fine. Will it translate? We don't know. But we do know they're not bad coaches.
Yeah. I think my main sticking point on John Summerall, and the reason that I like him so much as a hire, is because of the different ways that he's won. He built something at Troy, and he turned Troy into a winner while he was there. Okay, that's really nice. Troy's pretty small. They're G5 school. So you go to Tulane, another G5 school, but it had been built. Willie Fritz had built Tulane, and they were a consistent winner. And when he got there, they didn't stop being a consistent winner. He continued to win. So the aspects of, one, winning in multiple places, but two, winning in multiple fashions as well. Both building a program and maintaining a program is what would give me hope if I was a Florida fan.
What about, we talked earlier about Arkansas. What the hell happened there?
Well, I don't know what you think, Matt, but lack of diligence, I think, on Hunter Yurichek's part, where Ryan Silverfield, I think this is right, never finished higher, or may have finished higher than fourth in the American once.
Right.
He's never beaten a top 25 team.
Never beaten a top 25 team. While there's plenty of potential there, and they tried to buy their way into the Big 12 a couple of times, it just hasn't happened. And for him to take over Arkansas, I think, is clearly they settled. Let's put it that way. I don't know where he was on the totem pole, but not their number one choice.
Yeah, if I remember correct, or if the numbers that I've seen are correct, they let Golish get away for a couple $100,000 a year.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
So there is that aspect. It hiring wise, I'm not a fan of the hire. I feel like they could have shot a lot higher for their hire. Go ahead and double up on that word. But I think that their failures in that football program expand further than just their head coaching search as well. I watched that football team this year, and I can tell you that they were close. Like their offense was really good. They lost a lot of really close games, and it's not something where I look at it and I go, if they just had this little tweak schematically here or there, it's something where you're not able to compete with the rest of the SEC with the financial buy-in that you have from the people at Arkansas right now. And I think you have abilities to get more money into that program that quite frankly, Hunter Yurachek just hasn't. If I remember, I think the naming rights to the stadium, they still haven't sold those off. If you're hurting for money and you're Arkansas and you have the big donors that you have, and Jerry Jones, the Tyson family, the Walmart, the owners of Walmart, they have opportunities. And like Jerry Jones himself hosted that A&M and Arkansas game because he loves Arkansas that much. Like they have people willing to spend, and yet they still continue to be at the dead bottom of the SEC in terms of spending in reference to their football program.
Yeah, I visited with John Tyson last year when John Calipari took over, and that deal doesn't get done without him. We're talking about the CEO of the largest, food processor in the country.
Right.
And he had always been good friends with Calipari going back to his Memphis days, and, talked him into it. Didn't have a job at the time, obviously, Calipari, but that deal doesn't get happened without his influence, his guidance, his urging. Obviously, it wasn't there with football. And I don't know why, where football is still king at Arkansas and everywhere else, why that level of support and investment isn't there. I'm baffled.
Mm-hmm. We can go back to when Harvey Schiller, what was it, 94 that they brought Arkansas in? Something like that?
92, South Carolina 92. And Arkansas.
Right. And if you remember, Harvey had Texas and Arkansas. And Texas had that vote that said we're not splitting Texas and Texas A&M up. So they had to scramble to get the other one, and that was South Carolina. But it was going to be Texas and Arkansas. And unfortunately for Arkansas, they haven't really had much going on for them since they entered the conference.
No, they had some good years under Bielema.
Yeah,
but that's 9. I think they had like 1 10-win season under Bielema there. Mm-hmm. So relative success.
Interesting stuff. All right, we're getting toward the top of the hour here, so guys, let's go around and talk about. You want to do some picks for this weekend? Anybody feel comfortable with their opportunities?
Sure.
I know exactly what Matt's going to say for the championship game in the Southeastern Conference, but we'll start with you, Dennis, as the guest. Give us ACC and all the way down.
ACC. Are we going to? We're not doing 10. We're doing what? The top?
No, just doing the Power Four.
Okay, Power Four. Matt makes a great point about Alabama having the mojo over Georgia. I like how Georgia's improved as the season's gone on defensively and in the running game and physically. They like to talk about how they do get more physical as the season goes on, and you've seen it in their history. So I think I'll pick Georgia by a field goal. Alabama still doesn't have a running game, but what Ty Simpson does and what the defense is able to accomplish with big plays is not to be ignored. But I think if Georgia's close or has the lead in the fourth quarter, they can hammer this thing down with their running game. I don't think Gunnar Stockton's anything special, but he is in big games. It seems like he has 5 and 6. What do you have? 6 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns against Tennessee, something like that. Great.
Yeah, I think he had 6. He had 6 against Ole Miss, and I think he had 4 against Tennessee.
Yeah. So I'll take Georgia by a field goal. We can go. Let's let Matt. You go ahead with the SEC, and we'll continue.
All right.
This is a game where sitting there in Athens. They had 4 or 5 opportunities to go win that football game. It was a 3-point football game. Talon Taylor drops a wide open post route that would have been a touchdown to give them the lead. They could have stopped him on any number of first downs. Ellis Robinson could have not jumped on the pile, gave him an extra 15 yards, this, that, and the other. It feels like they kind of had to thread a needle in Athens. And based on the injuries they've gotten, it feels again like it's kind of something where you have to thread a needle. Jam Miller's questionable. Josh Cuevas is questionable. They lost LT Overton for this game. He's out. But then you turn around on the flip side, Georgia's without Drew Bobo. They might be without Drew Bobo for the rest of the season. They've got some injuries of their own. They've been banged up throughout the year. People forget CJ Allen was there was not a guarantee that he was going to play last week against Georgia Tech. He's a guy that's been banged up. Chauncey Bowens was out last week against Georgia Tech. He's a guy that's coming back. So they're both pretty banged up teams. Alabama cannot run the football. They have not exceeded in their deep passing game. It's two aspects where Georgia has gotten better. They've gotten better in terms of rushing the passer. They've gotten better on the backside in terms of defending the pass on the backside. It feels like they're going to have to live in that intermediate to short passing game. And everything about this just screams Georgia's gotten better. Alabama's been inconsistent. Georgia, this one just leans all the way Georgia, which is the exact reason why I'm going to pick Alabama. Because, it's happened over and over and over again. I remember walking into the stadium in 2021 thinking this is it. Like, we conquer this demon in Atlanta in 2021. We knock Alabama out of this 14 playoff. It didn't happen. It happened a couple weeks later, but it didn't happen then. And I've seen it time and time again to where I'm just not going to pick Georgia until they prove me wrong.
I'll make this quick. I'm going to go with Georgia by touchdown. I think that Kirby gets the monkey off his back. So in Kirby, I trust.
We agree.
Let's move on to the ACC. Well, we talked about the ACC. Let's move on to the Big 12.
On the ACC, I will pick Duke because that would mean absolute chaos. I'm not breaking down the X's and O's. I'm just rooting for chaos. Big 12, I think Texas Tech is a top 5 or 4 team. They've been rated that way. Top 10 defense, top 10 offense. They really dominated BYU in the first meeting at home, 29-7. This is on a neutral field in Dallas. I don't think that much of BYU's offensive line. Bear Bachmeier kind of runs around back there and makes plays, but I was kind of surprised today. LJ Martin, their running back, was named the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, talking about BYU, but I think there's too much. I think it's too much talent for Texas Tech. Again, for chaos's sake, you would root for BYU and try to get 2 from the Big 12 in, but I think Texas Tech is too good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just touching on the ACC, I'll pick Duke just so they get a return on investment. You pay $4 million for a quarterback, you hope you get an ACC out of it. Miami doesn't have that chance. Duke does. They paid, if I remember correctly, the number was $4 million for Darian Mensah to come there and play this year. After he's at Tulane last year. Another John Summerall guy, by the way. No, and then the physicality of Texas Tech has been that of like your old school SEC teams this year in terms of what they do on their lines of scrimmage. They've been physically dominant in that Big 12 conference week in and week out. They had the slip up against Arizona State, but aside from that, they've pretty much handled everything that has come their way. I remember sitting here when it was a ranked matchup, Utah and Texas Tech were going head to head. I picked Utah because I like their physicality. I believed in what Kyle Whittingham had done in terms of their physicality. The same thing is going to rule the day again, in Arlington. It's going to be Texas Tech and their physicality because I don't think that BYU will be able to sustain drives on Texas Tech and really wear them down overall. But say BYU were to win, not even talking about the playoff thing overall. What a week it could be for BYU. I mean, you stuff Penn State in a body bag in terms of your head coach there. Then you'd get a Big 12 title. And then, hey, on top of that, you made the playoff. So if they win, heck of a week for the people out there in Provo.
Kalani Sitake made no sense anyway at Penn State, by the way.
No.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, probably.
Not to say it wasn't real. I just don't know how it made sense.
It might have been. They may have been on his list, he may be on their list, but not at the end. Since Landman is my favorite show on television, I'm going to have to go.
Me too.
With Tech.
I love that.
Billy Bob Thornton is not coaching out there, but if he were, no, Texas Tech by 2. I'm thinking double digits.
Yeah, line's set at 12.5 right now in that game.
Wow.
I'm not worried about. I don't know if it's 12, but I think it could be 10.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Texas Tech is that much better. Okay, that leaves us. Let's see with there's a
Big Ten.
Big Ten. What am I talking about? People pay me money. Yeah. All right. Ohio State and Indiana.
Yeah, again for seeding.
Yeah.
Not much drama, I guess, here. In fact, an advertisement for why have championship games. But it's a big deal in the Big Ten, and there's some, some drama there for the loser. Do they stay in the top 4 and get a first round bye? I would lobby for that being the case, no matter what the result. We all know about Ohio State. Ohio State's defense got better than the one that won a national championship last year. I thought Ryan Day did a masterful job with Julian Sayin, getting him better and giving him more on his plate as the season went on. I thought he was very limited early on. I think that contributed to that 14-7 score against Texas in the opener, but they let him go downfield more. You saw the plays he made against Michigan. I think the team now has rallied behind him. They do everything well. Best defense in the country. That being said, Indiana went to Oregon and won convincingly. I think they're among 3 or 4 teams that can win the national championship. I will say this: I would expect a rematch of this game at some point in the playoff. So this may be the second of 3 meetings. I think they're that good. Probably this will decide the Heisman Trophy, Fernando Mendoza and Sayin, because Diego Pavia, who's lobbying for it himself on social media, his season is over. And if I had a ballot, I would vote for him. I love the guy. But I think this game may decide the Heisman Trophy. I will boy, it's hard to go against Indiana, but Ohio State has shown us week after week what they're made of. And I'll go with Ohio State maybe by 7.
Yeah, I'm going Ohio State too. The image that I can't get out of my head is last week after that Michigan game, as the snow is falling, and Julian Sayin's jersey is so white that you can't even tell it's snow. I mean, this guy hadn't been touched all year. That offensive line has done a fantastic job. Dennis, you mentioned it. Their defense has gotten so much better under Matt Patricia, which is insane to say because of how good that unit was last year. But they have gotten better. Arvell Reese has been fantastic this year. And when you add just their ability, their star power on the 3 different levels of defense, secondary, you got Downs and Igbenogson, Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese lined up next to each other. Their defense is ridiculously good. You got Caden Curry on that defensive line. And they just haven't struggled. I think you can make the argument that Indiana has played a tougher schedule. Not make the argument. Indiana's played a tougher schedule in terms of when they got Oregon versus when Ohio State got Texas. Going into that game, watching it unfold, you knew both those games were going to be conservative game plans. Neither one was going to show their hand all too much. I like Ohio State just because they have been so good and so consistent. Oh, yeah, and by the way, they got 4 and they got 17 on the offensive side of the football to help Julian Sayin out.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned that yet.
Yeah,
how about that?
Yeah, their defense is so good. Somehow Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith became the footnote.
And they lose their the guy that made that room, Brian Hartline, to South Florida. So I don't know how that's been worked out. I don't know if he's staying.
He's going to come back for the game.
But by the way, the best receiving room in the country.
Oh yeah.
No, Hartline's coming back for the game. They're
good.
So they'll have him for one more time. You know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to go for Indiana only because this is the biggest game that Indiana has ever played in college football. And you just for the same reason that Dennis wants to see Duke win the ACC championship, I'd like to see Indiana win. Now, Indiana, if they played Ohio State probably 10 times, they'd probably lose 8 times. But I'd just like to see it happen this time around.
Yeah. I mean, Indiana's definitely the better story if they were to win. Yeah, you're going to see a trillion pieces on if Indiana wins. You're going to see next to nothing other than, just another game for Ohio State if they were to win this one.
Right. But you're right about the snow situation in Ann Arbor last week.
I mean, that thing looked like they just drenched it in bleach and brought it out of the wash.
Right.
Ridiculous.
You could have had a Tide commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Okay, boys. Any final thoughts? Guest Dennis Dodd. Any final thoughts?
As much as this game and college athletics tries to ruin itself, to fall apart, there are still inspirational stories. The reason we go, the reason we cover, they're out there, and they'll keep coming. No matter what the commissioners, what Congress, what the lawyers do. What we've seen in this day and age of the portal and free movement and NIL is attendance is bigger than ever. People still want to watch, and that won't stop because the games are too great.
Right.
Yep.
Quick opportunity, Dennis, for shameless plugs, where people can read your stuff and watch your stuff and just follow you on Twitter. Whatever you want to do, go for it.
Yeah, on Twitter, at Dennis Dodd CBS. I still have my CBS tag on there. You can, consume me or see me every week on the Carolina Panthers pregame show and pregame on Saturdays on 104.5 The Zone in Nashville.
Okay.
Before every college football Saturday, which are soon running out.
Yeah, we're getting. I'm going next week to Army Navy.
That'd be great.
Which is always a fun trip. And Mike Kelly, who was USF's athletic director, is now the athletic director up there, got his dream job. And Navy and Army, this is about I want to say the 15th or 20th time I've been to those games. And there's really nothing like it in sports. It really isn't. It's a very entertaining, and it's a bucket list thing if you haven't done it, I guess would be the best way to put it, just to go and see these two teams play, because at the end of the game, there's not going to be that many guys going to the pros. They're playing, and they're going to then go on and in many ways be brothers in arms. So that's going to be fun. Meanwhile, back to Matthew for your final thoughts.
Yeah, Jim, I've been lucky enough to go to 2 Army Navy games. Those are it's just different compared to all the other college football. But in terms of the final note, don't forget about the G5. They have the Sun Belt Championship on Friday, and you got the American Championship on Friday night as well. The Sun Belt Champion is important because if JMU wins, they're currently ranked. They're currently the 5th highest. If Duke were to win, as things would project right now, James Madison would be that 12th team in the bracket. In terms of the American Championship, it's a playoff elimination game on a Friday night. People talk about wanting play-in games. This is one. You got one on Friday night. Turn the TV on.
There you go. All right, Dennis, thanks for joining us. Matthew and I are going to be back tomorrow. We're going to have our old buddy Chris King come in. Chris is aimed mainly at the pros, and we're getting into a pro football weekend as well. So we'll talk to Chris a little bit about the playoffs, but more about professional football tomorrow. So there's that. And just before we get out of here, guys, one more time, we're going to say hello for Zach and our advertising. And there it is. Write that number down if you're looking for a house in Georgia or anywhere in the Southeast. There it is for you. Okay. Gentlemen, thanks so much. And Dennis, we're going to have you back, my friend, if you wish to come back from time to time.
Would love it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, guys. Have a great day. Yeah, those of you who are watching, and we have had last count about around 700, 750 people. So thanks for joining us. And if you miss, you can do it. Come back and watch it. You can leave comments. We will answer. We're really nice people. So, by all means, subscribe and ring the bell. Okay. That's all we ask of you. And until tomorrow, for Dennis Dodd, our guest, and for Matthew, we will be back with Chris King tomorrow. Okay.